24-Hour Citizen Project is an event where we connect people with community-focused ideas with expertise and financial backers to make them happen. It's an event created for citizens to impact their community directly through the pursuit of citizen-led projects. So here we are today with what I would call the poster child of the 24-Hour Citizen Project in a lot of ways, with Team M.I.Brary, and I know that you're missing one of your critical team members, Cassie. So you guys can introduce her. But what I want to do, I think we should just start off by, I want you guys to introduce yourselves and then give like a 1-minute pitch of what the musical instrument library is.
Sure, man. So my name's Dr. Ryan Cazares, and
I'm Chris Lofstrom.
Yeah. So the Lafayette Community MIBrary, or the Musical Instrument Library, is a place where you can go. It's actually at a library branch here in Lafayette. You can go with your library card and check out one of a number of musical instruments like violin, guitar, accordion, rubboard, keyboards, banjo, bass guitar. We have about 30 instruments now that you can check out.
Nice. So you guys were funded in 2017 during the 24-Hour Citizen Project. How much were you funded?
We received $5,000 from you guys.
Okay. Let's do this. Take me back in time, and I think this predates Chris too. I want you to take me back in time to the point where you came up with the idea and like kind of how that happened.
Okay. So I had heard about the Idea Exchange events, and this was at a time where I was trying to go to just as many local community events as I could. I guess I still kind of am that way, but at this time I was just trying to fill my time with different ways to get out in the community. And I'd heard about Idea Exchange, and I knew some people that went through the 24-Hour Citizen Project the previous year. So I decided to check it out. And I didn't have an idea until about 2 hours before the event. I was thinking I was going to show up and everyone was going to talk about like bike lanes and stuff, and I was
Which they did.
And
you always have bike lanes.
Yeah.
People in Lafayette love the bike community. So
I love it too, and I think we need that for sure. But I wanted something with music, and it just popped in my head. You know, what if we could check out a musical instrument and not have to buy it, and just bring it back when we're done with it. And that was where it started, pretty much.
So, all right, so for the listeners that don't know, so what we do before the main 24-Hour Citizen Project event is we put on this thing called Idea Exchange. And it's basically, it started out as idea speed dating. And that's kind of how it was branded. And actually, I think this year is whenever we learned that we needed to change the idea to Idea Exchange, because what happens, we had people showing up thinking that it was a speed dating event.
I still get tickled every time I think about that. That I remember witnessing this firsthand. Somebody actually showing up thinking it was a dating event.
Yeah.
My mom was disappointed that it wasn't.
Oh yeah, that's right. So we renamed it the Idea Exchange, but basically what it is, it's a precursor event to the 24-Hour Citizen Project where people just show up and share ideas very informally, kind of like in a speed dating musical chair type situation. And so I remember Ryan walking in, and he said, "Yeah, I heard about this event. I wanted to come, and I kind of came up with an idea on the way here. I'm going to share it. I'm really not sure if it's something that we really want to pursue or not, but we'll see how it goes." So it was kind of neat to see the MIBrary born from its infancy stage. So like a lot of projects that come to us, maybe it's a 50-50 mix. Sometimes there are like people in place that have kind of been like talking about doing a thing, or have like tried to do a thing but didn't have the resources for a while, and they're using the 24-Hour Citizen Project as a platform. This was one of those ideas that came out just very, very organically through an event called Idea Exchange. So, all right, so you came up with this idea. You left the event thinking what? This is something I should be able to do?
Yeah, I guess my concern was at the event, the idea was completely different than what it is now. It was, I need to find a place where people can check out a guitar. They'll go into a room and play it for an hour or two. Maybe hire a teacher to teach them, or a buddy or something, and then they bring it back to the front desk. That was the idea. And then through the idea exchange and over the next several weeks leading up to the event, it evolved into, let's actually do this at an actual library. And so leaving the idea exchange, it was still, it was still an idea, just an idea, and so it needed some tweaking, and it needed some evolution to take place, and we did that over the next several weeks.
So walk us through that. So a couple months before the 24-Hour Citizen Project, we have this idea exchange. You left feeling encouraged to pursue your idea, knowing that you had some barriers in place that you probably had to overcome. What were really the next steps? And I know this was back in 2017, so this is a bit of time ago. What were kind of like the next steps that you had to take? You applied, right? You got selected. Kind of walk us through that process a little bit to the point of where your 3-minute pitch happens.
Yeah, okay. So basically, I kind of had to come up with, the biggest hurdle was I need to find a place to put this. At the time, Chris and I are very involved in a local young leader program called the 705. And we have a program where we're coupled up with a mentor each year. My mentor that year was Gerd Wusserman of the Acadiana Center for the Arts. And my initial thought was, maybe we could have it there at the ACA downtown, which it's a place that has arts, and they showcase musicians, and they have concerts come through. So I thought it was a good spot. But after talking to him, he's like, we really don't have the place for it, but I'd be happy to be your fiscal agent and hold the money for you there. And so it wasn't long after that one of your old partners, Kate Durio, suggested you should do this at the library. And so I brought it to them expecting a bunch of red tape, and they were like, dude, that's awesome, let's do it. Let's do it at the library. So it was that easy, really. And once those partnerships were in place with the Center for the Arts and the library, it really wasn't much after that. Just needed to get some instruments and make it happen.
I think our longest meeting was actually trying to figure out where the location was going to be. One of our very first meetings we had, I think we spent, and our team was a little bigger at that time, and I think we spent probably a better part of that first meeting at your office, sitting there. For the majority of the meeting was like, where could we host this event? And we were all brainstorming these different locations. I remember Seth even had some great ideas, and everybody had some great ideas, but it was just still, that was probably one of the biggest hurdles that we had to overcome, was trying to figure out where it was going to go. And then it led to eventually somebody coming up with an idea, hey, this is a perfect partnership, and it turned out to be.
Yeah. So at that point, you guys felt comfortable, okay, we kind of have a location solidified. We've got a fiscal agent, which, by the way, is a requirement of the 24-Hour Citizen Project, to really have a nonprofit that like helps oversee the funding of your project, right? And so that was the ACA. You felt comfortable at that point. I could stand up in front of a crowd of people, pitch this idea, and try and get funding, and feel confident that I can get it done. What was it like forming a team? Was it difficult?
Not really. I mean, I feel like I have a big network of friends, and at that time, Chris and Cassie were close friends of mine, and they're also people very driven, and so I recruited them, and then just kind of organically people heard about it and were like, hey, I'd like to help. So we had a couple other extra little helpers there, but the core team, Cassie and Chris and myself, came together pretty easily.
So you pitched it to them, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I'm in." Or I mean, it didn't take any convincing at all, Chris.
Well, I mean, it was a no-brainer. As somebody who, grew up playing an instrument was what got me into college, my instrument. But of course, my parents dreaded that day when in 6th grade, I remember, I picked the most expensive instrument. My parents couldn't afford it, so we ended up having to rent my first instrument. But it'd have been great to have something to be able to test instruments out and not have to spend the money up front, because you don't know if you're going to stick with it. Luckily, I stuck with it all the way into college, and it got me a scholarship. But if I wouldn't have, that would have been a lot of money that would have been wasted at that point. And this project solves that problem. And when he pitched it to me, I was like, he didn't even have to ask. I was like, let's go. This is phenomenal idea.
I'll never forget the time I wanted a piano for Christmas, and instead of getting me a keyboard, like I was a kid, right? Instead of getting a keyboard, I wake up Christmas morning and there's a stand-up piano like in our living room, and my parents had got for it. I remember it being like such a big deal. After like the initial excitement wore off, after like 3 months, I came home from school one day, it was gone. I was like, what? How do you buy a piano? And like, no, we leased the piano for 3 months to see if you would use it.
Oh, man.
I know. So anyway, I ended up picking up piano later down the road. It just wasn't whenever I was 8. So anyway, okay. All right. So we talked about how the idea came about. And we talked about leading up to the 24-hour citizen project. So there is this moment where you pitch your idea, which was phenomenal, by the way. I remember you came down with a guitar, right? You came down the tunnel. Everyone was cheering you on with a guitar. I don't know. You remember what song you were playing?
Yeah, okay. So I was standing in the front, actually. I was playing a Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix.
Is that one of your favorites?
Oh, yeah. It's just a fun song to play on guitar. And my teammates came down the tunnel and were throwing out T-shirts.
That sounds like an expensive tunnel walk for a nonprofit.
Hey, you're going to be a rock star. Hey, you might as well. We have our rock star here, Dr. Ryan, who pitched the idea. So he is the true rock star behind the idea. So
I love it.
It was perfect.
So you pitch your idea, you compete. At the end of the night, you're holding a $5,000 check. And you're saying, okay, there's nothing left holding me back at this point in terms of like financial resources. What's your very next step from there? What is the plan for implementation? Break that down for me.
So, just to add to that, in my network, I have a lot of musicians. After playing local music for 15, 20 years. I know a lot of local musicians, and a couple of my friends in a band called Sweet Cecilia, they have a nonprofit in the name of their dad, who passed away recently, or a few years back, and he was a well-versed musician. He was an incredible musician. Anyways, they heard about the project and gave an extra $2,000. So we had $7,000 to start with. So yeah, I was like, oh, we can make this happen easy. And what was crazy was that at first I didn't even have to spend any money because people were bringing me instruments. We started trying a musical instrument drive, like a donation drive. We set up at Downtown Live one weekend, downtown where they have concerts, and that really flopped.
And it was hot.
That's the reality of these projects.
Yeah.
It's failure.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great lesson for people to hear. But go ahead.
Really flopped, and I kind of say, I think that if I reach out directly to people that I know, they'll either have an instrument to donate or they'll know someone that has an instrument to donate. And that was what worked. So we were able to get half or more of the instruments just donated. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have to spend a lot of money. So that process took a good year, and also working with the wonderful ladies at the library. They one day they sat me down and they were like, look, let's do it. Let's make it happen. Because I was trying to perfect the system before we made it live. And they were like, let's just do it and then learn as we go. And so it was them stepping in right at that year point in saying, let's just do it and learn as we go. That really got it going. So
I think they removed one of the key barriers. When I remember them, one of our meetings, they sat down and said, "Here it is. It's on paper. Let's make this work." And it was just it was that simple.
And I think another thing was like a lot of people were concerned about like theft and all that stuff. What if someone doesn't bring an instrument back? And they were telling me, people check out lots and lots of DVDs here. Mm-hmm. It's going to be just like that. So we're really not concerned about that.
So how many instruments do you need? Or this was an internal goal that you guys set. How many instruments and what variety of instruments did you need in place before you said, okay, the MIBrary is ready to go live?
Yeah, our goal was 20 because it gave it was a good number to have enough out in circulation, but it wasn't too many to where we could tweak the system a little bit in case something went wrong. So we started with 20, and once we got to that point, that's when we launched it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So 20, and we're talking drums, we're talking a fiddle, guitars, what else?
Accordion. It was important for me to have Cajun and Zydeco instruments in the MIBrary because that's so popular here. So we were able to land an accordion. We got even some Zydeco rub boards. And like you mentioned, guitars, fiddles, guitars meaning electric and acoustic. We had a drum to start out, a banjo. I would say those were the main ones. Oh, we had a couple ukuleles as well.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So diversity in the instrument mix.
Now, one thing that we have is, at this time, and likely for the near future, is we wanted to avoid mouthpiece instruments.
Yeah. For
a couple of reasons. One is it would be really costly to sanitize these instruments, keep them sanitized. Two is those instruments are expensive to maintain. Okay, so imagine if a key on a clarinet or a saxophone broke. That's a lot more costly than a string on a guitar. So
right.
That's one limitation we have, but there are actually some other programs in Lafayette that cater to that type of audience. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay, so donation of instruments were a thing. What about location? So, I mean, early on, you had the luxury of establishing a location like the library. Let's assume someone's listening to this, wanting to implement a MIBrary in their community. What are the things that you look for in a location? And I ask that question because it seems like the library is like the perfect infrastructure in terms of, process, flow, the processes that you need in place already exist in a library. So did you explore any other options, or was it always the library that you had in mind?
The first option was the Acadiana Center for the Arts because I thought that would be a good place to store the instruments, and it was all about the arts. We had someone mentioned that he was trying to start a collective place where videographers and photographers and musicians can kind of hang out. But I'm not going to name names, but I knew his word didn't mean a whole lot, so I kind of steered away from that. Mm-hmm. And it was when Kate suggested the library that they have an inventory system. They check out unconventional things already, board games, DVDs. That was when I was like, okay, well that was easy,
Yeah.
Go to the library.
Yeah.
It made logical sense because I think that was what delayed us so long was we were trying to figure out how we use that amount of money is not a lot of money if you need a space.
Right.
And so trying to figure out how to pay for a space or find a space or
have someone there. You probably
yeah,
went down that road.
We were thinking about all those options when it was staring us in the face until somebody mentioned it to him.
Yeah.
It made sense.
Yeah.
Like you said, they already have the systems in place.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of advice would you guys give to a library in another community that's saying, I'm not sure we want to incorporate this into our program?
Well, I think that the main the two big issues that they're probably hesitant on are one, theft, and two, the maintenance of the instruments. What's interesting is that the MIBrary has actually created a job. So we have someone at the branch, and it's just part-time, but she comes in and maintains the instruments and restrings them if they need to. And so they also asked their current staff, and it turns out that their staff has a lot of musicians too, and they could have probably internally found someone to help too. But they all had their own responsibilities, so they ended up just hiring a part-timer. Okay. So I think that's maybe one hesitancy is the maintenance, and it's a reality, you know. And then two, the theft. You just kind of have to look at it as, you know, if someone steals the instrument, just don't let them check out anything ever again.
Yeah.
And you know, it's actually easier than you think to acquire a new one, a replacement. People are out there that a lot of musicians have way more than one instrument, and they're willing to, you know, donate their extras. So
it's a good and a bad thing that whenever we think about implementation of any kind of idea, it's like we want to rip it to shreds. We want to think about all of the negatives because we want to prepare us for those conversations. So I remember some of those things coming up during the idea exchange. I mean, like you immediately think, oh, this is a great idea. These are the things I believe you're going to have to overcome. So it's fortunate and both unfortunate that we kind of go in that direction. Tell me this. Tell me a little bit about the business structure of the MIBrary. Like, are you guys an official nonprofit now, or are you just an organization that just kind of exists out there? And then insurance is something that I think people might ask about too. You know, or is that covered through the library? How does that work, and what does it look like?
So I have a goal to be a nonprofit one day. At this time, it doesn't make a lot of sense just because I'm incredibly busy with my business, which I'm an eye doctor. But we're still working with the ACA, so they still keep our money, and they're very happy and helpful. And as far as the library goes, their insurance is, you know, it falls under their umbrella of insurance. So that's another awesome thing is we don't have to worry about buying insurance. But yeah, the MIBrary as it stands now, we're just a team of people and we just make it happen. Basically.
Okay, good. I like that. Walk me through this real quick. And I feel like I'm taking a step back because we covered this a little bit, but I think it's important and we have to go back to it. The process for which someone comes in and rents an instrument. And I know that this is going to vary from just say library to library, but I'm curious to know, all you need is a library card to do it. You've made that clear through a lot of promotional stuff. But like, how long do I get to keep my instrument? Do I have to bring it back in and like check it in and then check it back out? And like, kind of what does that look like? If could I keep the fiddle that's there, you know, for you know 3, 4, 5, 6 months if I really like it? And kind of tell me what went into the decision and trying to figure that out.
So we sat down kind of at a table similar to this with the three of the leaders at the library. It was me, Chris and Cassie as well. And we kind of nailed out the guidelines. We decided that we wanted an adult or someone at least 16 to be able to check out the instrument. Now, if a kid wants to learn the fiddle, we have a kid-sized fiddle, but they need their parent to check it out. A person needs to be at least 16 to check it out, but you could still, give it to your kid to play. So we just wanted to have that adult responsibility involved. So that was one guideline we established.
And the parent engagement too, I think, is probably critical.
Yeah, you're right. Secondly, you can check it out for 28 days, so 4 weeks. It gives you enough time to kind of, it's not enough time, definitely not enough time to become an expert at an instrument, but it gives you enough time to realize if you're interested in that instrument and you want to continue with it. Now, because it's a popular program, you can't check it out back to back. What you can do is, let's say you have an acoustic guitar checked out. You can bring it back and then you can check out the electric next. Okay, so you can't check out the instrument back to back because of the popularity of the program. So
let's go there real quick.
Sure.
I don't want to derail you too much. How many, do you know the stats right now? Of like how many instruments have been checked out? Do we need more instruments?
So I last checked on the stats about 2 months ago. In July, next month, 2019, we're gonna make a year. But 2 months ago, there was 111 checkouts, and that's with like 25 instruments.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been great, man.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me what the money was used for. You had $7,000.
Mm-hmm.
How do you spend the money? You've got a location. You don't have to pay for part-time staff. Did you have to buy some of the instruments, or were they donated to you? Do you use the money for promotional stuff? Break that down if you don't mind.
Sure. So a lot of donations, instrument-wise. We were given a lot of donations, guitars especially, but they're not always necessarily in the best shape. So I brought them to some local professionals to fix them up and get them ready to go for circulation. So that cost some. And yes, we did buy some of the instruments. We bought the ukuleles, the snare drum, the rub boards, the accordion we actually bought at a pawn shop because one of my local Cajun musician friends was like, dude, go get this accordion. It's cheap and it's quality. Go get it.
Nice.
So we bought that. And so it added up pretty quick. But, we still have some of that initial money. We are going to start fundraising actually later today because we'd like to get that second year. We'd like to add some more instruments, add some more variety because we're going to, now that a year has gone by, we know that it's working.
Yeah. And
now we're ready to get the word out.
Yeah.
So.
And one of the costs too was the accessories. Most people don't realize there's a lot of accessories for instruments too. So I know Lafayette Music helped us out with that, and like the picks and straps and tuners and a lot of that stuff
Cables,
we had to
amplifiers.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff we had to buy, and then the library provides all that when you check the instrument out. So that's one of the unique things to know, that you don't have to worry about having the accessories when you go check it out. That you're actually going to give you all the tools you need with it, and then you also have the ability to check out. They've also got books and DVDs and different things that you can get as well when you check out a musical instrument. So it's just not a one-stop, get your instrument and then you're left out to dry.
Yeah. Simple question, but like these are like the small details that I think people might care about. So you've got a room with a bunch of instruments in it. Somebody brings back, say, an acoustic guitar in a case. You don't want to check out that guitar to someone and it's untuned, right? Mm-hmm. Have we trained people within the library system how to maintain some of these instruments, or does Ryan and Chris stop by periodically and like check on things? What is that?
So at first I was stopping by like if a string broke or something, but the library, as I mentioned earlier, the library hired that part-timer, and when someone brings the instrument back, she makes sure it's tuned, she makes sure it's in good shape.
Okay.
So that way, when someone checks it out, they don't have to, especially if they don't have any knowledge of the instrument, they don't have to say, they don't have to worry about tuning it.
Oh, well, yeah, and you're discouraged. I mean, imagine like playing a G chord on a guitar, and you'd be like, man, it sounds like crap.
Yeah.
Like why? I get it. I mean, those are kind of like the small details I think people are going to have to figure out and learn from you guys. Okay, so tell me about launch. What did that look like? I mean, I think you guys have done some pretty like unique programming for the MIBrary, right? I remember y'all had like a big launch day. So you got all of your instruments. So you set a goal of 20. You've got location figured out. You've got process and flow figured out. You've been working with the library staff for a long time. You've got a fiscal agent in place, and you're ready for launch. What did that look like? Tell us about it.
So the library programmed a launch at the Clifton Chenier branch where it's housed, and they really got the word out. They have hundreds, maybe thousands of people on their email list, so it was really easy for them to get the word out. We went out and got a couple of local bands to play, which you don't think of bands playing at a library, but that's what we did. We got a local kind of hip hop group in that who's like in that vicinity of the library. They're located around there, and we also hired a like a New Orleans style brass band, a local band.
It was also part of the Citizens Project that year. So we got the relationship through the Citizens Project with the New Native Brass Band was one of the people that we connected with from sharing the idea and at the event. So,
and so there were a lot of people at launch, and we had all the instruments there for them to try, and it was fun, and to see experts there playing the instruments, I feel like it inspired people to check out the instruments because they saw the musicians there. So
how good did it feel? I mean, like whenever you're pursuing the idea, you're thinking about all of these things. You're thinking about implementation, and then you do this launch party, and then you see kids there playing these instruments that you've worked so hard to collect over the last couple of years. I mean, that must have felt really, really good. And then knowing that within a week, these kids are going to have these instruments in their home, and they're going to be pursuing something that maybe they wouldn't have been able to if it wasn't for the MIBrary.
Yeah. So that's, one of the two goals was to be able to provide the instrument, especially for the child whose family may not be able to afford to buy the instrument. The other goal was, what if this family saved up for months to buy an instrument only to find out that was the wrong one for the kid? So the MIBrary kind of allows you to trial and error that, as opposed to, let's say, getting a fiddle when you were really meant to play a guitar,
right?
And then having that fiddle just sit there and collect dust, and mom and dad already paid for a fiddle, we're not going to get you a guitar, sorry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think what felt the best though, and this is kind of a long shot kind of fantasy type of thing, but my friend Aileen Bennett, who's a local artist and works for herself and does a lot of creative things in the community, she said, imagine if someone gets up on the stage at the Grammys and says, I started at the MIBrary, and I was like, man, I never thought about that, but that would be awesome. And so that's what that and seeing the kids play the instruments was, feels good, man.
One of the things that stood out to me was that I'll cherish this memory is from that first event on that grand opening, the launch day, was was not only the kids' reactions, to see kids that may not have ever had a chance to put an instrument in their hands or even try one out just because of no access.
Mm-hmm.
And then to also see the fear and excitement in the parents' eyes. You know, the fear, oh my God, my kid is beating the crap out of this drum. Am I really going to take this home? But at the same time, wow, my kid's getting this exposure. And you could just see there was kind of a sense of relief, as fear and excitement all in that same moment. And just, I actually at one point just stepped back and looked around, and there was like 3 or 4 different kids with an instrument, and their parents just watching and taking pictures and videoing their kids playing those instruments. I was like, wow, this is amazing, that this is something that probably most of these kids in the room would not have done or participated in had Ryan had the vision for us to create this MIBrary.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like you're helping Lafayette with their untapped potential with musicians, right? I mean, you know, everybody talks about the cultural economy here. I don't know the exact stats, but like the number of Grammy nominations per capita in Lafayette.
That stat for you.
What is it?
Actually, Joel Robideau gave us that stat because he, obviously, the mayor, when he came around and did our subject matter meetings when we were doing that, he gave us that stat from, was it 2007 to 2017, that Lafayette had nearly as many Grammy nominees as New Orleans. I think, what was it, 151 for New Orleans and 149 for Lafayette, which that means, and then like the next biggest city was like 20 or 30. Yeah. So Lafayette had just as many people nominated for Grammys as New Orleans.
Yeah, wow. That's not the exact figures, but it's close. And that was a slide I presented at the 24-Hour Citizen Project, was that, and it was just to make the point that, you know, we have this untapped potential, and that we have just as much quality music as New Orleans or really any city in the country.
Yeah. So I mean, what now? I mean, the MIBrary has kind of taken you guys to some great places. Like, you spoke at some event a while back, is that right?
Yeah, so I've spoken at a couple events. I've spoken at the Opportunity Machine conference last year, but the big event was the Music Cities Convention, which took place here in Lafayette, and it was centered around, you know, what can communities who are rich in music, what can they do to keep that richness, and what can they do to cultivate and grow the music and make sure it sticks around, and make sure that the community appreciates it. And so after I gave that speech, which there was definitely over 100 people listening. After I gave that speech, I had a lot of interest around the country to start, you know, their own library. I got calls from New Orleans as well, and I'm actually talking to someone from Lake Charles later today who wants to do one. So
let's talk about that for a second. How does the program? Well, we know how it sustains itself on a local level, right? But a lot of the projects with the 24-Hour Citizen Project, the goal is not just to be sustainable, but to model themselves so that other people can potentially adopt this idea, the MIBrary, in other cities. And I think the process that you guys have been through is something that other cities, I think, could pretty easily go through and adopt themselves. So, like, what now? What happens whenever New Orleans or another city calls you and says, Ryan, Chris, we want to do a MIBrary. What information do you have for us? What advice do you have for us? Mm-hmm. Is there a process in place, or something that you're developing, maybe a resource manual or something that you could share with cities?
Yeah, not at this time. I really want to sit down, maybe give the MIBrary a little more time, because we're about to launch a marketing video, and we might give it a little more time before I sit down and kind of type up a process manual, because I've done that for my business. And if you can write down your system, it's easily, you can easily replicate it in any other city. So, to answer what's next, helping other cities implement this system would be, on top of that list for sure. But as far as Lafayette goes, I'd like to get more instruments. I'd like to make our own nonprofit, so that possibly, a child who checked out an instrument and loves it and just has to bring it back and their heart's broken, maybe we can figure out a way to provide an instrument for certain children. Maybe we could set up a recording studio somehow. That's kind of a further down the line dream that I have. But yeah, I would say the next thing on the list would be to help other cities make it happen, and I'll just have to sit down and write that system down.
He already put a bug in our ear. He kind of tapped Cazares on the shoulder and said, hey, if we take this next level or go nonprofit, are you all willing to be a part of the board and do those types of things? We're like, absolutely, let's go. Let's make this thing happen.
You got to have a team around you. You got to form it. I mean, that's what's critical. I mean, it's a critical piece to the 24-Hour Citizen Project, but you've learned there's a critical piece to the MIBrary. You guys are, Ryan, you're an eye doctor. Chris, you've got a big job in the corporate world. Cassie's got a job as well. I mean, so these aren't, I think a lot of times we think about the pursuit of projects and we say, well, we'll leave it up to the nonprofits, or we'll leave it up to a corporation that has some resources and people to make this their philanthropy. This isn't that. This is just, a group of citizens, you guys, that had an idea, and it's become, like I mentioned, almost like the poster child for the 24-Hour Citizen Project. So thank you for that.
Yeah. For sure.
Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you want to share?
I think, some of the critics of the project, and I won't say that there's necessarily critics, but there were some criticisms as we were pitching the project. One of the criticisms was, what is this going to do to the local music shops? Like, are you competing with them? And my answer to that was no. My goal was to be able to expose people who won't necessarily have that path to get an instrument, or maybe never thought about it ever, and then eventually they might visit a local shop and buy one permanently. And that's happened. I've heard Anya, the owner at Sola Violin, said someone bought a violin from her who checked out a violin from the MIBrary. And the guys at Lafayette Music said people come in and talk about it all the time. So I know that it's had, I think that being a business owner, the fact that it's had an economic impact is awesome. That also makes me feel really good about it. So,
how can people continue to follow the MIBrary?
So, of course, we have a Facebook page, facebook.com/MIBrary, MIBrary. The Lafayette Library System has its own page, LafayettePublicLibrary.org/MIBrary. There you can look at our actual inventory. There's pictures of the instruments. You can see if it's checked out or not. And we have an Instagram as well, at MIBrary, MIBrary. So yeah, look us up on social media, look up the public library's website, and soon you'll see, again, our promotional videos coming out actually later today. So I'm excited about all that, man.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing your experience with us. Hopefully other communities are listening and are inspired by your project. You've been an example to so many other projects that have come through our system, through the 24-Hour Citizen Project. And so thank you. Thank you for caring about your community. Thank you for being a big part of what we do.
Well, thank you, Butch. I think what gets overlooked sometimes is you provide that avenue for us to get it done. And so the 24-Hour Citizen Project is awesome, and I feel like every year it seems to be getting bigger and bigger, as we saw last night with the turnout to your first idea exchange.
Yeah.
That was really inspiring, man. So thank you for what you do, man.
Thank you so much.
Definitely, thank you. And then I have to share this, because I've got to get this in. But so the 24-Hour Citizen Project has not only created the MIBrary, it was Ryan's vision for the idea, but it's created this great project. It's also created people who are now highly involved with the project, and very involved. It got me very involved with the project. And not only that, now we have our first citizen team who actually is now a backer for
Yeah.
program. So you can't leave out Ryan's commitment to this program because it was such a success that he's now become a backer, and I've now become part of the program. And it's just I just think it's the most amazing thing.
We can't
You created it, and we thank you for that.
Well, thank you guys. We can't get rid of you guys whether we try or not. We got Ryan coming back every year as a backer, and Chris part of our outreach effort. So, guys, thank y'all. This is Deer Community Live, and we're checking out.